Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Sustainability Advisory Board on Monday, February 4th, and call the meeting to order. We do have quorum, and the first item on the agenda is public comment. Tonight, we have several items on our agenda. They include bike lanes and urban bee and chicken ordinances, and some other things. But if you would like to address any of the issues that are on the agenda, please come up and give us your name and address and limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes.
Now or when we take up the issue?
Now.
They're doing it
Now. We're doing public comment now, as that's the first thing.
But do you want it to be non-agenda items? Or can they come up and talk?
They can
about
come up and
bike
speak
lanes?
on anything at
okay.
this point. Last time I had split it between the agenda items and non-agenda items, so I just wanted to be sure everyone knew that. Okay, if you'd like to speak, you need to come up to the...
Best time to do it, or should I wait until we talk about the specific?
You should do it now. I'm asking for public comment now. We will have public comment now. Once our meeting starts, we will no longer entertain public comment. So please.
Hi, my name is Ben Rennert. I live at 1823 Simpson Street in Oshkosh, and I'd just like to talk about the bike lanes on your agenda today at West Haven. I'm on the bike and ped board for the city as well. I've been on that board for a good number of years now, and this project has been part of the overall plan for quite some time now. And West Haven specifically, being on the west side of town with a bit more traffic and not a great deal of bike lanes that are presently in place, is a rather important part of our overall plan to help connect other areas of interest. In this case, specifically the shopping area, such as like festival foods and Lowe's, Menards, places like that, and also the hospital over there. There's not a very safe or effective way for cyclists to get from south to north, which this bike lane would help facilitate. So with that in mind, having the ability for a cyclist to safely get from south to north, we need a full bike lane on both sides of this street in order to help continue our plan of connecting the city for other means of transport. Myself, I live, like I said, 1823 Simpson, which is on the south side. This is used. This would be used extensively by myself and my wife. We pull our two younger children behind us, and we'd like to try to use our bicycles to go grocery shopping and run some smaller errands. There is also something to consider too. We have a lot of younger riders that live in that area of Oshkosh, and the off-road bicycle trail at Aurora Hospital is used very frequently during the spring, summer, and fall months. And to just help keep the safety in mind of some of our younger riders and riders of all ages for that matter, I would heavily encourage you to keep this in mind when you're discussing it later today.
I have a question for you, if I might.
Sure.
Are the bike lanes one way? I mean, if it's on both sides of the street, you would use the side that's
Correct.
drivers
Yeah,
would
you
use.
would
If
want
there's
to
only
utilize
one.
it like a vehicle. Yeah. So if you're on the right side of the road, you would be then going just one way on that bike lane.
And if there's only one bike lane on one side of the road, what do you do if you're going the other direction?
We would not advise that to be put in place.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Does anybody else have any questions for Ben?
Ask him something?
No, I'm asking our board for questions while he's up there. Okay, thank you, Ben, for sharing.
Thank you for your time.
We appreciate it. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share?
I'm Lois Yankee at 480 Northwest Haven Drive, and I think we just want you to understand we're not against the bike lanes, We want to have the bike lane there. We just want to narrow it a half a foot on each side, if that's what we can do, and keep the bike lane, but allow parking on the east side. We're not against the bike lane. I think everybody's misunderstood that. We don't care. Keep the bike lane, but the houses and the condos on the east side, we'd like to have the parking put back, just like it is by St. Raphael's Church. They do this, it's the same thing is done there. They can park on the side by the church. We want to have parking on our east side as well. We pay taxes on our homes, and now we can't have guests there to park. We're more concerned about the bicyclers having their rights to get up there, but what about our rights? And if you're biking on Northwest Haven, you're going to end at Security Drive. Not Security Drive, at Patriot Drive. You don't have a bike lane anymore. To get to Festival, to get to Aurora, to get to Menards, to get to the credit union, the bike lane ends at Patriot Drive. So all the conversation about that is not right. So I just want you to understand, we're not against the bike lane. We just want parking back on the east side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Jen Steinhilber, 340 Northwest Haven Drive. I noticed when I was driving here that you have bike lanes on Wisconsin Avenue. Why anybody would want to ride a bike lane on Wisconsin Avenue, but I noticed that they're a lot narrower than the ones on our street. And that's why we were wondering why we couldn't have a little bit narrower ones and still allow parking. And as far as the south and north thing, I don't understand why you couldn't have used Oakwood. They have no parking on Oakwood, and this way you wouldn't have inconvenienced anybody because they know that there's no parking on Oakwood, and that still would have taken you from Witzel to 21, if that's where you want to go.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to share?
Hey, I'm Annabelle. I live on 1535 West Haven Circle. I'm 17 years old, and I just like to advocate for the protection of the bike lanes. Before I had my license, I would always use these bike lanes to travel to get to my friend's house and to go grocery shopping at Festival and to go to school and things like that, as well as just enjoyment. So I think it's important to protect these for like the safety of like kids in our community, because I was using these by myself as I was like a lot younger, just biking around town and enjoying Oshkosh. So the bike lanes have like positively impacted my life, and I could get more places, and we don't have like reliable vehicles in our family, so a lot of times I've got to like bike to work and things like that. So yeah, I just would like the bike lanes protected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Brad Brown. I live at that's my old address, 3020 Mockingbird Way. Now you guys know my password for everything. Just kidding. I'm part of the Bike and Ped Committee also, and I just wanted to bring up a couple points. One, the reason that I'm here tonight is kind of advocate for the bicycle lanes. We do have I joined the Bike and Ped just this last I think it was last year, late in the year. But I learned that they have this big plan on what they want to do with the whole town of Oshkosh and do biking, and kind of incorporate that on the roads. In that, by doing that, they have this big overall plan where they want to make it safe for cyclists. I do live on that side of town, and I do ride on Oakwood and all that. I do ride on Oakwood and on West Haven. And Oakwood, unfortunately, is not part of our plan because it's the township, where West Haven is part of the city. So when you're talking about this tonight, trying to think of it as far as being safe for bicyclists. So as we move those lanes closer into the middle of the road, it becomes a little bit more dangerous. Doors are going to be opening up, which means that bicycle riders are going to have to be a little bit more attentive to what's happening both on their left side and on their right side. So that's one of the things that we kind of take a look at. It would have been nice if we could have kept biking closer to the curb, maybe put the parking out towards the road, right? But that actually is not recommended either because, again, the doors opening up both for the inside traffic and on the outside traffic, I'm sure the pedestrian, the people that are getting out of cars wouldn't want to walk into the traffic to go around to the sidewalk. So the biggest thing about this is this plan, and the reason that we did this was is a main artery. It's definitely used for that north-south transportation, but it's also a road that we thought we could have safe for the people. So just kind of think about those things. Sure.
What about the idea of the having the bike lanes, but reducing it?
It just becomes more, to me, it becomes a little bit less safe.
Okay.
Do you have a question for somebody?
Yeah, it might be more just for the bike and ped committee in general.
Okay. Anyone on the bike ped plan who would care to respond to Jason's question?
Yeah, so just more specifically, when the bike and ped came up with 5 foot, where does the 5 foot come from? Is that a recommendation from a national organization or?
Bring Alexa up quick.
So I think this is getting kind of confusing because we have a lot of materials that were included in the packets that maybe it'd be easier if we could see them on the screen. I don't know if we could do that because it actually shows the alternative designs.
Are you suggesting we run the PowerPoint first and then talk about it?
I think that would help a lot because it shows.
Okay, well, then let me ask if anybody else has any other public comment so that we can get through that and get into that part of the agenda. Doesn't
Yeah.
that kind of make sense?
A lot more, yeah.
Okay, we do have another public comment, I see, or two.
My name is Ed Pollux, 460 Northwest Haven Drive. Okay, once again, we are not against bike lanes. We want parking for our friends to come and visit us. That's what we want. I don't understand 6 inches difference in a 5 foot lane if that doesn't make any sense. I know it's recommended. It isn't a rule. It isn't a law. It's recommended, okay? So, West Haven Drive, that's a speed trap. I don't know why anybody would want to drive on that road anyway. I shouldn't say speed trap. It's a speeder's delight. It should be a speed trap. But, this biker's fine. I've lived on West Haven Drive there for 10 years now. I see very, very few bikers. Very few. It's great to have bike lanes all over the city, granted. But for every biker that is there, there's 1,000 cars there. So that's all I've got to say.
You've already had your turn. Yes?
Hi, my name is Brian Keenert, 1647 Sanders Street, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And I've been talking a lot with various different people in the community. Most of my friends are cyclists, and they've all been very reasonable. And while none of them that I've talked to or chatted with through Messenger have said they want to give up the bike lane, they've all been very reasonable and empathetic with the people who live in this particular area. And there seems to be, I don't know if I'm understanding it correctly, but there seems to be an informal, very informal consensus among the cyclists that I talked with that it would be okay to share in other words, and I'm not certain I have what their idea is correct, but obviously, like some people have said, there's not a constant stream of cyclists by any means using those bike lanes, but nor would there be a constant 24/7 stream of people parking. along that particular area. So I'm not sure it would be legal or recommended, but it seems like the cyclists are okay with sharing the bike lane with people who would occasionally park there so that these people could have friends visit their homes. And I know that wouldn't be ideal or perhaps not even legal, but it seems to me that the cyclists have been more than reasonable and very empathetic about the situation that these neighbors in our community are expressing. That and it is true, you're not gonna see a lot of cyclists on the bike lanes, and it's one of those things where unless you're sitting on your front porch all the time, you're really not going to see them. And even when they do go by, they're often going by unnoticed because it's sometimes 6 in the morning or sometimes 7 at night. And but they are used. They're used a little bit more than perhaps it has been suggested. And I'm not saying that anyone's lying. I'm just saying that they are used. And it just seems to me that there's still a notion in this community that bikes belong on the sidewalks, and it's nobody's fault that there's still that notion. There was a law passed. It was an emergency provisional stopgap municipal law passed, I think in the 80s, that indicated that, hey, you know what, we should allow cyclists to go on the sidewalks, not because it's safe or the right thing to do, but because it's the lesser of two evils, because Oshkosh had been, and to a certain extent still is, what I would characterize as a bike hostile community, which is not to say motorists are hostile, it's just a dangerous community to ride your bike in. And so they passed that law as a temporary stopgap measure to make cyclists more safe than they would be if they had to ride their bikes on the streets, which is where almost all other communities in the country have bicycles ride. Now that law is going to be removed and eliminated the moment our community becomes a bike-safe, bike-friendly community, but it's been on the books ever since it was made because while the Bike and Pedestrian Circulation Safety Plan has been long in coming, it's still in its infancy. And the point that I made the last time we met about this is, the concern I have is if neighbors in this neighborhood successfully allow for bike lanes to be removed because we want parking so that our friends can visit, then all of the other bike lanes could be compromised by using that same argument, and the very new bike plan that's still in its infancy would be compromised, or at least potentially compromised. So what the cyclists I think I've talked to have said is, why can't we share? Why can't we use the bike lanes and parking at the same areas where it wouldn't be ideal, but at least we'd still have bike lanes, and at least the neighbors, when you do have friends over, would be able to park. Now, I'm not certain how that would really pan out in reality, but it seems like the cyclists haven't been unreasonable, at least not the ones I've talked to. They're not against parking at all, and they do empathize with the neighbors and what they're saying. And they just don't want to go backwards, and they don't want to be unsafe. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board on any subject tonight? Come on up.
I hope it's okay if I just speak my short opinion on what I've heard tonight.
Of course.
Okay, cool. I'm new to Oshkosh. I'm from Los Angeles.
Could I have your name and address, please?
My name's Antoni Zepeda. I live on 420 Wagyu Avenue, just a few blocks over there. And I'm new to Oshkosh. I was living in LA as a bike courier, and I'd like to kind of give my opinion on what I heard. Out there is in downtown LA is lots of cyclists out there all the time. Whereas the bike lanes, there are a lot of them still. I found myself and other cyclists riding in like the gutter, which is literally like 6 inches, you know, and then I have speeding buses coming by me, speeding cars coming by me. So I'd like to just address the board. If you're not a cyclist, 6 inches does make a difference, really, if you're trying to bike safely and there's heavy traffic. I think more bike lanes, the better. I mean, where in the wintertime, there's not too many people cycling around the place, but like I think that during the summertime, there's probably more people out there. And as, you know, kind of time progresses and people get a little bit more like health conscious, I mean, that's like, I think it'll encourage people to go out there and bike ride if they see all these bike lanes everywhere. And also, whereas the bike lanes might not be all used all the time, I was kind of thinking about it. Like I might reasonably say that the handicap like parking spots aren't used all the time, or like handicap ramps are used all the time, but they're there as a service from the city and because it's law, of course. But I mean, like, anyways, that's all I wanted to say. I love it here. Thank you so much. First time doing something like this.
Well, thank you for sharing. It's good to hear from a different perspective. Okay, anyone else? This will be your last chance to address the board if you're not a member of the board or a member of one of our groups, like somebody we had invited to speak tonight otherwise. Yes.
I'm Judy Pollux, and I live at 460 Northwest Haven Drive. I've seen more bicyclists at all of these committees that we've come to than I've seen on the road in front of our house. We live in a house, not an apartment or a condo, and I've lived there for 14 years. Nobody is asking to eliminate bike lanes. I don't know why the bikers they have to come in here gung-ho and be all advocates for this, that we're not asking for that. We're not asking for that at all. And 6 inches, you're talking about 6 inches of 5 feet, not 6 inches of 6 inches or 6 inches of a foot. It seems like the whole thing is getting out of hand, that we don't want to eliminate the bike lanes. That's never been any of our intentions, never. So why is it such a big issue here? That's not the issue. The issue is, can we have parking with a bike lane? That's what we want.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one else coming forward, we'll move on with our meeting. To be clear, we're going to go ahead and follow our agenda, and the bike lanes is down just a couple of spots on here, and we'll be getting to that. However, when we do discuss items on the agenda, we will only be allowing the board to speak or people that we invite up. We do have our transportation director here, we have somebody from the health department, and we have one of the other planners, so they may have information that will help us make some decisions. Okay, I do have one additional public comment, and this was sent to me by Alicia Alsberg, who is a friend of the board, often attends the meetings when she can, was not able to be here tonight, but wanted to report on the progress that the green team at Traeger Elementary is having. And did you see this? She had sent this to the board earlier. It's fantastic. They've actually conducted a waste audit on the garbage and recycling. I think my biggest takeaway, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this because I want her to be able to present this to us in a couple of months when she doesn't have a conflict and can come. But Traeger Elementary has 3 lunch periods, and it covers 75 minutes each day. In that 75 minutes, the 6th grades that attend and eat lunch there produce 105 pounds of waste a day. That is nearly 9.5 tons of waste every single year. The garbage that goes directly from Traeger Elementary's food service into the landfill. So they have come up with a fantastic plan, some ways to rely on some best practices, some communication with parents and teachers and kids, and she's going to be reporting to us on this probably in a couple of months when she's able to be here, so I'm looking forward to it. But I just wanted y'all to know there is progress being made on that because we have been kind of following this for several months now. So with that said, the next thing on our agenda is the approval of minutes from our January 7th meeting. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes as written?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then the next thing on our agenda is the West Haven bike lanes. As Alexa had said, I guess we have a PowerPoint you'd like to, and is this going to be narrated as we go along? Or-
Do you want me to just present it?
If you
That
want,
would
yeah.
be
you can-
fantastic.
All right, so my name is Alexa Najunas. I am the Associate Planner for the Planning Division for the City of Oshkosh. I'm also the Staff Liaison for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So I put this PowerPoint together last week and I didn't actually review it, so I'm gonna be surprised what each slide is, but, okay, so we're talking about the Northwest Haven Drive bike lanes. So there's an overview of the area. The red line shows pretty much the area we're talking about. It goes on the north side, Patriot, and the south is what road? Is that Security?
Noel, isn't
Noel.
it?
Oh yeah, it's one of those Noel ones. So then the next one, I think we just zoom in a little closer. You can see the road is kind of on a curve. So there's a street level view. Currently, the drive lanes are 15 feet wide and the bike lanes are 5 feet wide. And then there's just another view. You can see there's a car driving, so I used this image on purpose to show you what it looks like and how much space the car has. So there's the car, there's the space. And then just to give you an overview of the area and the surrounding residential properties, I'd say majority of the properties on the east side of the road have 2-car garages. And I did just a rough estimate through our GIS program. The driveways on average are about 34 feet long and they're about double wide for 2 cars.
Is the 30 feet up to the sidewalk, right?
Yes, that's the sidewalk. And then this is a design I made up with using a website called StreetMix. So it lets you kind of plug in all the different amenities and you can change the dimensions. So this is the existing configuration that you see out there right now. So the surface width, which means curb to curb, is 40 feet wide. The bike lanes are 5 feet wide. The vehicle drive lanes are 15 and the speed limit is 25 miles per hour. Should I try it on the computer?
Yeah, you could try that. I don't know why this isn't working here. There.
So I worked with other staff members. Jim Collins, Transportation Director, helped with the potential alternatives. So alternative 1, these are not in any order, they're just random, shows the surface width stays 40 feet wide. This option allows you to keep the bike lanes at 5 feet wide, and then the drive lane, where we do have some wiggle room in those dimensions, are at 11 feet wide, and then it adds the parking lane, which our minimum is 8 feet wide for parking, so that just stays as like a constant. So just one note, we have a very similar configuration that exists today on Irving Avenue, and that is the exact same width, the same speed limit, 25 miles per hour, and it has parking on one side, it has the 5 feet bike lanes, and it's also 11 feet wide. So we have a really good example in the city that's been there for at least 2 years, that's been working functionally. We have gotten a few complaints for that configuration, as far as I know. So there's a picture. So Google Maps doesn't have an existing photo, but that's just to give you an idea how it's still a residential area, the same width of the road, and it's the same speed limit. So it's pretty similar to how Northwest Haven is. So then alternative 2 is very similar to alternative 1. The only difference is that the bike lane width is reduced to 4 feet and the vehicle drive lane, it goes from 15 feet to 12, and the parking lane stays the same. And then alternative number 3 would be no change at all, leave it as is with the 5 feet bike lanes, no parking. I think that's all we have. So any question?
I had one. In your opinion on alternative number 2,
Okay, could we go to that one? Okay.
I know there's concern at 4 feet being too narrow for the bike lanes and 5 feet being what we should expect.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have concerns about 11-foot wide roads, because I mean, there's curves there and the people, I mean, you're stacking people potentially. I mean, in your opinion, if we did 4.5-foot bike lanes and 11.5 drive lanes, I mean, would that be a alternative? Then we could still keep one side for parking
I
and
think
kind of please everybody?
I can always have Jim back me up. I think we would prefer to keep it at whole numbers. I don't think we do half width, do we?
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. I don't think that would be a problem. But just to give you a little more context on what we're talking about is, I think, you know, I wasn't at your last meeting, but I've heard the residents speak a couple times and et cetera. So how we got here really was, you know, as some of the Bike and Pedestrian Committee members had spoke before, the city adopted a bike and pedestrian plan in 2011, which was actually, you know, I wasn't here at that time either, but it was adopted by the Plan Commission, the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, the council. So that plan was put into place, and part of that plan was to include multimodal transportation throughout the city. So it's been, like somebody had mentioned, it's a work in progress. You know, a little bit gets done at a time, just like anything else, because as you're learning, each time the Bike and Pedestrian Committee each year picks a couple projects that they think would fit into the plan, and then what they're trying to do is connect the city. So we're trying to make connections east, west, north, south, so people, you know, whether you're driving, biking, walking, can get where they want to go. So that's kind of the history of this plan, and they're working on updating it now. But as you can see, each section of road that we want to do is unique. So every time, a lot of the times there is this competition between parking and bike lanes because the road isn't wide enough. In this particular case, the road appears wide enough to accommodate parking on one side. That's a pretty unique situation. So the Traffic Review Advisory Board, when we met last time, had recommended going with the 4-foot bike lanes and the 12-foot drive lanes. They didn't like the narrower drive lanes. However, that is acceptable. It's perfectly acceptable as well. You can go down to as narrow as a 10-foot drive lane, although 10 feet does feel a little bit tight. We do have 10-foot turn lanes in some areas of the city, but usually there's not as many vehicles in a turn lane. But that is acceptable as well. So in this area, I think the original petition was to remove the bike lanes, so that's what we had to address initially. But in the process, you know, when we took it to traffic review and started looking at it, we're like, well, the road is wide enough, you probably could accommodate parking in this unique situation. So I think there's a compromise here that will work for both. However, I think what the Bike and Pedestrian Committee is saying, and also my department's responsible for implementing the bike and pedestrian plan, so we do the street painting or whatever's needed to get that done. I think the important message we don't want to lose sight of, though, is that, you know, if the city wants to support the bike and pedestrian plan that was adopted, we need to make sure that we are doing that, because it's important that these connections don't later get implemented and then later removed. So I think this is a case where there seems to be a compromise we're working towards, but I think that it's becoming a bigger issue because the people involved don't want to see that plan broke apart, because once you start breaking that plan apart, you no longer have a plan. And then just to answer your question on 4 versus 5 feet, so the history on that is, and this was before my time too, but when bike lanes first started becoming popular, 4 feet was the recommended standard for a bike lane. So when Wisconsin Avenue was reconstructed and the bridge was reconstructed, it was actually built for a 4-foot bike lane, and that's how the pavement was, or that's how the road was paved. And again, that's another good case. The bike lanes didn't get painted initially when the road was reconstructed. We did that about a year and a half ago after they were reconstructed as we could get it through the process. So that's why those are 4 feet. But after that was done, the recommended standard changed to 5 feet shortly after that. So the current recommended standard is 5 feet, however, 4 feet is acceptable. So that's where the current standards are on the width of the bike lane. So, like Alexis said, I think we have, a few reasonable alternatives that we can probably satisfy everyone here.
Just for my reference, offhand, being someone who has both biked and drives down Irving Road, what's the width of the road on Irving? Is that an 11-foot, 12-foot for the vehicle?
It's
11?
So there are two 11-foot lanes, and then there's 8 feet of parking.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Okay. So I drive and bike down alternative 1 all the time. So, okay, perfect.
Now you know where you are. Jim, is there any advantage to having 10-foot lanes as far as reducing traffic speed and making the whole road safer?
There is, I guess, line of thought and study that says the narrower the road is, that it does calm traffic. So that, I don't know that that's been proven, but there is a lot of theory on that.
Speed bumps.
As you get a wider lane, you feel more comfortable going faster. So in a lot of cases, that's another good point, though, that, in my personal opinion, I think that bike lanes and things like that where you have a painted line on the road actually help organize traffic better, because vehicles then know where they're supposed to be, so the car knows where they're supposed to be, the bikes know where they're supposed to be. It does help better organize traffic, and it also is a traffic calming measure, which is what you're getting to. So, but 10 foot's a little narrow, but it is acceptable. In my professional opinion, I'd recommend 11 or 12 and still accommodate the bike lanes, but that is perfectly acceptable as well.
And how is all of this affected when snow plowing is going on, and where does the snow go?
Yeah, it's not really affected by the striping on the road, because that's more affected by the width of the road, because obviously you only have so much pavement. So.
I guess what my question is does the snow, when it's first plowed, does it end up on the terrace, or does it end up in the bike lane, or it's in the parking lane?
On Irving, it's in the parking lane.
Yeah. Yeah, it is more difficult, obviously.
And heaven knows it melts 3 days later anyway, so who cares? But
right. Yeah, I know. I go over to the university a lot, and I know in front of Colf the bike lanes. When it snows, they're obviously more difficult to use, just because of that. We live in Wisconsin. There's not much we can avoid there.
In my personal opinion, the 15 feet's a little excessive for the drive lanes right now. We don't need 15 feet. So, I would support more of the alternative, some kind of hybrid between 1 and 2. Maybe even, like I said before, the 4.5 feet bike lanes, and still get a parking lane of 8 feet, and the drive lanes are a little wider, because I know people get nervous, and when stuff gets compacted, there's more chances for accidents too. Look at Main Street. I'm sure there's been a lot of near misses with doors opening, with people, driving by. So.
Yeah, I think, that's definitely acceptable. 15's a little bit wide. I think when we initially talked about this with traffic review, I think one of their concerns was with the curves, and that's why I think we ended up without the parking. However, it is acceptable to, do 11 or 12-foot lanes.
Jim, I spent a couple of weeks in Denmark, and it was wonderful because they ride bikes there all the time, everywhere. But they have a different kind of road diet, and I'm wondering if that's not recommended here, and if so, why. They put the bike lane against the curb, and then they have the parking, and then they have the road. And I know somebody had alluded to that briefly earlier. Is there a reason that we don't consider that as an alternative for our city plan?
Yeah, no, I was, like I said, I wasn't here when they adopted the bike and pedestrian plan, so I don't know what the reasoning, I know that's done other places. I don't know what the reasoning is why we adopted the plan the way we did, but now I think that we've started down the path the way we have, where there's the bike lane on each side of the street. I think that's what people expect now. In my personal opinion, I think it'd be a little more confusing if we started putting two-way bicycle traffic on one side of the street. Or are you just saying that it's the bike lane and then the parked car?
Yeah, it's just
So-
reversing the bike lane
Yeah.
and the parking lane, which seems, I come from a driver's ed background, and it seems to me that that has a real argument for safety, for it being a safer way to handle things. But
Yeah, I don't know why
noticed-
we chose one way versus the other, but like Brad said, I mean, either way, you're gonna deal with the doors opening. It's just whether it's a passenger or the driver's side, so. And I think now that we've started down one road so drivers and bicyclists know what to expect, for consistency, I think it makes sense to kind of continue down the path we've started.
I kind of like
That
it.
makes sense.
The advantage I think to doing it the way that we're doing it too is that when you have to turn left as a biker, you have to get into, that lane of traffic, so people turning right aren't going to be, there's a little bit of trouble there otherwise, unless maybe I've just been doing it wrong. But, if you have to turn left in front of people, you have to get in the left lane as a biker versus, staying in the bike lane and trying to turn left in front of somebody who might be going straight or turning right. So if you had, the parked cars and then the bike would have to try to get out between the parked cars, get into the lane of traffic.
Oh, you're saying for the left-hand turns?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why do you want to go through the cars? Just stay in your lane. But
Yeah,
I get
right,
it now.
you
okay.
would, but then it'd be harder to be seen if you're turning left or trying to get out of there and I think it would just be a little bit harder to transition.
Turns too, it'd be harder for the cars making right-hand turns would
To
have a
see
harder
you.
time.
Cut you off.
Yep,
Cyclists,
because there's,
seeing the cyclists if there was a parked car lane.
Yep, or if you're going straight and
Okay.
someone's turning right too, that would be, as a biker, you're going straight
Right.
and a car's turning right, it would be
Yeah,
harder to see
yeah.
somebody.
Board, do you have any more questions for Jim? We didn't say this earlier, but you do all know he's our Director of Transportation for the city, right? Okay.
So what are you
Does-
looking for our final recommendation tonight? Is that kind of where we're at?
I think so, yep.
Okay.
That's the idea.
Could I have just one more question? So
Yes.
what was the final thought on the alternative number one? Was the 11 feet seen as kind of dangerous for the cars? Because I would rather have the cars going slower and narrow the driving lane myself than narrow the bike lane, because I thought the bike lanes on Irving were narrow, and finding out those were 5 feet, I thought they were 4 feet. I was like, ooh, okay, if that gets any tighter, that's really tight if you're on a bike and if you're, on those a lot. So with the curves, is 11 feet, is that kind of iffy, or?
No, like I said, that's perfectly acceptable. It's
Okay.
just that the traffic review board liked the drive lane a little bit wider and the bike lane a little bit narrower, but I think either one works just fine.
Okay.
So, and I think just for future reference, I mean, I think we're headed towards some type of compromise here, but, I hope that in the future we can get this done ahead of time rather than after we've already implemented it, because now, whatever we do, if we change alignment, we're gonna have to, scarify that striping, which is not easy to do. It does leave scarring on the road because there isn't a good way to remove traffic paint, as I've learned over the last few years. There's a number of methods, but the best and most common method right now is to do what they call scarifying. So we actually cut the line off, so you groove the pavement a little bit, and you'll still be able to see it for a while until the rest of the road kind of deteriorates to match that. So this isn't a huge stretch, so we can do it, but I hope in the future that we can kind of, once we decide on the plan, we can stick with it.
It's also additional cost, so.
Yes. Fortunately, in this case, it's not a huge distance, so we have a machine, we can probably do it in-house, but we don't have very big machines, so we can't do like large stretches at once. So just in the future, keep that in mind. And I'm sure that, as the bike and pedestrian plan gets updated, they'll be taking that to plan commission, probably to this commission and the council, and that's something we'll have to consider as the plans are adopted, that there will be these issues that'll come up where, sometimes it's going to be a choice between one or the other. But fortunately, in this case, it sounds like we have something reasonable that can accommodate parking and bicycles. So,
Well, and I hear there is a plan we can follow.
yes, yep,
Yes.
and that's
Maybe just the plan before it goes on the road, right?
right.
Yes, that's what you're saying.
Yes, I appreciate that very much since we're the ones that have to implement that plan.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else have anything for Jim? Okay, do we have any more questions for Alexa, or do you have other things you'd like to share with us? No? Okay. Does anyone, Emily, did you have anything to add to the conversation? Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Okay, well then, what we need to do is just make a recommendation as an advisory board. Obviously, we make no real decisions, as we are very aware. We just advise. Discussion?
Make a motion down the road, and then if, when we debate, we decide against it and do something else. But one, I want to compliment everybody who took the time and effort to be here, and the people who are probably watching on TV. Thomas Jefferson would be proud of you, because he said, American democracy will continue as long as you have informed citizenry. And I also want to applaud everybody who talked. I thought you made persuasive, on both sides, good arguments. You were passionate, and yet you were respectful. I didn't hear anybody say my opponent was a brain-dead little bug, which is good. And as the chair just said, we don't make recommendations. You know that, but some of the people listening may not. Most of the board agrees with 97% of the world's scientists and the world's government that our environment is deteriorating at an ever-rapid pace. Most of us here probably remember how high when we were kids, how high the snowbanks were. That was before the city trucks came through and put more slush in your driveway. We used to measure it in feet, now we measure it in inches. And people will say, well, it's fine, we're gonna stop. Let's stop right here, and of course you can't anymore, then you can stop a ice shelf. It goes through. And that makes the big question of the wicked question is what it's going to be like for our kids in Oshkosh when they're our age. And we need to have Oshkosh, I believe, more sustainable than it is now. And the future, call it tomorrow, is built on the decisions we make today. And bicycles are more sustainable than cars. And therefore, I would make a motion with the chair's permission that the Oshkosh Sustainability Advisory Board recommends that we do not change section 27A-10(1) of the municipal code. Thank you.
So in other words, it stays the way it is now. Is there a second for that motion?
Takes care of that.
Would anyone like to make a different motion?
Personally, I don't think we should be going backwards, right? As you've just said, right? Sustainable is the future, so I don't want to make bike lanes any smaller than they are. If the recommendation used to be 4 feet and now it's 5 feet, there's a reason it was changed, right? Obviously, safety was taken into consideration. So personally, I would go with alternative number 1, reducing the vehicle drive lane while keeping the bike lane width the same, and then just adding the parking lane as the compromise with the residents living on West Haven. So personally, I would make a motion to approve alternative number 1.
I'll second that.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second. Discussion on this, anyone?
Well, the one thing I'll throw out there is over the last month, I've spent a couple hours looking at Google Scholar about all the various bike lane research. And my takeaway is, 1, bike lanes do reduce accidents out there. 2, bike lanes are safer than sidewalks. The accident rate is higher on the sidewalks. And 3, the accident rate is lower the wider the bike lane is. So definitely the 5-foot bike lane is appealing. And at the same time, I saw some notes from transportation experts that were suggesting that you actually need wider bike lanes to encourage more people to bike. So from that perspective, alternative 1 is certainly, to me, the more appealing option.
Okay.
My points on alternative 1 is we get to keep the 5-foot bike lanes. The 11-foot drive lanes might slow the traffic down, which would be good even if bike lanes weren't there. And they get their parking, which makes them happy. So I think everybody can be happy. There's bike lanes on both sides. I mean, I think it's a win all the way around.
Okay, any further discussion on this motion? Okay, then the motion on the table is that we make a recommendation that we would like to see alternative 1 happen. And we'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? Okay, I guess that passes. Is that good? Okay, moving on. The UW Oshkosh Environmental Studies projects that we had got put on our not on our website, on our
Yep, they are on the
they are
Sustainable Oshkosh website.
They are on the Sustainable Oshkosh website. Okay, so everybody can take a look at them now. I did take a look at them, and although I did not read them word for word, they are, once again, absolutely fantastic. I continue to be incredibly impressed with what the university's classes share with us and what they produce for us. It's terrific. Stephen, you have probably some things you'd like to say about them, or?
Sure. Yeah. So I too just briefly looked at them. I didn't get a chance to look at them and do them justice in terms of research on or reading through them thoroughly. But the reports are on the website. They're on the Sustainable Oshkosh site, excuse me, and they are also, I think I had them posted in our meeting materials for this meeting. So I am going to look through them a little bit more. And then Professor Feldman and myself, we will probably meet and discuss in spring or summer for the next semester, which will be fall of this year, that we do collaboration with UWO again.
And on what subject and all?
Yep.
Did you have a chance to look at them, Jason?
Yeah.
You like them?
Comment later.
Okay.
What happens to their recommendations?
Usually those help inform projects as, like, we're still working on this audit that they worked on with us. So we're trying to push that forward as staff, as I'm able and as other departments are able. Also, so some of the stuff that they did is stuff that we could take action on and, the city could potentially implement. But then also there's a whole other section of that audit that hasn't been looked at. So we'll try to launch into that a little bit.
Okay. A lot of the things that they've done for us in the past, Pat, have been used by not just the city but other entities within within our community for information. So it's kind of out there for everybody to look at now, which is great. Okay, our Environmental Leadership Award update that did close on January 31st, which we are now past.
Yep. So I only have the one nomination. That's the only one. I think the next step will be that I'll have to help coordinate between the SAB and the Southwest Rotary Environmental Beautification Committee to form a sort of committee between both groups and decide whether or not to move that nomination forward to formally award that or not.
And when that committee meets, we can also decide on future dates and timelines for
Yep.
and ways to reach out further for more nominations next time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I know a lot of times what we'll do is we'll say, like, this award nomination period is open from such and such day to such and such. And so we could have done that for this. We just haven't formally decided yet. So that's why I had our IT staff take it down rather than leave it up and have it out of date.
Okay. Next on our agenda is an update on the farmers market handout.
Yeah. Yes.
How's that?
Don't really have much of an update for this month. I have also the next agenda item, which took most of my time. The only feedback I've really received since our last meeting was just to add something about rain barrels onto the handout. So that's what I plan to do. And then I can beautify it a little bit more as well, and I can have a bigger update next month. But overall, the feedback from last month was just really positive. So thank you everyone for that. Thank you for all your work.
doing this.
Not a problem.
Yes.
It's kind of fun.
And we have a little bit of time before we have summer farmers market, so we're good.
Right, yes.
Okay, next thing on our agenda, the Facebook page.
It's
Do we have an
me.
update on that?
Yes. Can I have the mouse, please?
Sure.
If I can run the screen. Let's see if it works.
Wait, well.
Oh, otherwise I'll just go to the computer.
Yeah, there it is.
Sweet. So we officially have a Facebook page. It's technically existed for a couple weeks, but I just made our first post tonight to coincide with our meeting. So I'm just going to kind of run through what it looks like, what Steven and I kind of did, and then what my hopes, dreams, and future goals are, because I would like obviously all of your input on those as well. So this is kind of what we look like. So this is the image I was talking about for the last couple meetings. This is the image that Oshkosh Media uses when they post our meetings. So I really just took it from them. This is just a free image I found on Google. That's what was recommended to me to use, was any free images I had or anything any of us personally have. But just to get it in the right pixels and the right size, I just, again, used a Google image. We don't have much going on yet because, again, this is pretty brand new. This is our cute little handle, though, at Oshkosh SAB. That was kind of fun. We are not to use the city logo on our Facebook page. That was what was recommended to me from Emily. So yeah, we just won't use it, but we are free to, use all of their guidelines for social media posting and stuff. They're also pretty new. So in general, if we have a question or concern, I'll just run it by her, and she'll get back to me as soon as she can before I post anything.
Were we just liked while you were talking? We were just like while you were talking.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm super annoying, and I invited all 780 of my personal Facebook friends to like our page. Nice. So since we've been sitting here, we're now up to 20. It's super exciting. They even gave us a little shout out when we hit 10. It was pretty cute. Also, just for the record, this is my personal view of the page. Now, I'm an administrator of the page, which is why I have all these extra little things like this. That's not what the common view looks like. So you're all more than welcome to log on with your own social media, smart devices, whatever floats your boat. Your view will just be slightly different because, again, I'm an administrator to the page, as is Steven. So as we scroll, you can see that I already have some events. I just went through April. I just kind of ran out of time, but I'm going to have all of our meetings posted as events. People can like them, comment in them, so we can get the word out too. So hopefully we have more public comment, not just on things like bike lanes, but on everything that we do. So that'll be really exciting. I did a super brief, if I can find it, introductory post. This is kind of just what's recommended, something super short and sweet you can read in under 15 seconds. So it just says, welcome to the City of Oshkosh Sustainability Advisory Board's Facebook page. We are appointed volunteers who advise the City Common Council on ways to make Oshkosh a more sustainable city, and we look forward to interacting with you. Obviously, I will be posting a lot in the beginning to gain people's interest, to pique everyone's potential for engagement with us. So yeah, we don't have any reviews right now. We don't have a lot going on because we're little babies in the social media world. But it's really neat. So again, I'll be posting a lot initially. So one, please like our page and promote us. Done. We're up to 34. Oh, we're so
people
cute.
are watching at home.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm not friends with these people, so that's nice.
But we
yeah,
like them anyway.
We're so cute. Yeah, I like it. Thank you. But yeah, so this is just a really great tool for us to just get out there on a different platform. Not everyone is available during this time during our meetings. Not everyone is able to come to our meetings. So it's just another way to interact with people, and in a really fun setting as well. So yes, I'll post a lot initially, and then I kind of plan to back it off to once a week. There'll be times where obviously we'll pick that up during farmers market time frame. Obviously we want to get all that information out. Hopefully post pictures as well. If you guys have pictures too of projects or anything we've worked on in the past, I'd love if you could send them through Steven for open records, then to me, so that I can fill and we can do throwback Thursdays and stuff. It'll be really fun as well. But I kind of originally thought of doing a monthly theme. of maybe like plastic free February, like stuff like that, so that we can tailor our post to a general theme. That way we have a cohesive plan as well. We could even pick chapters out of our book little thing that we do to like post those as well. There's a really huge variety. Obviously sustainable is a really big hub umbrella term that we can really break it down however we like. So if you have ideas for things you'd like me to post, please again send them through Steven for open records, then to me, and I can see what I can do. Also, if you just want to write a post for me, that'd be super cool. Again, through Steven to me, that'd be neat. And it doesn't just have to be for like today. Like I can schedule posts out pretty far. So if you're like, hey, I think this would best hit, you know, our little market in March or in whatever, I can schedule those things for those dates and times as well, so that we can post them in the future, but at least we have the information now, just so we don't forget about it and we stay on top of it. So if anybody has any feedback, any thoughts, comments, please let me know, but otherwise I'm just going to kind of do my thing.
I think the idea of a chapter every once in a while is good.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
Think, I think pictures of the shoreline development in the
Yeah, that's what I was
summertime would
thinking.
be nice.
Yes.
I take
so
many pictures, so many.
Yeah.
So.
It'd be nice to have like an actual photo besides these green and blue clip art images that I have.
I have lots of flowers
Or even-
and butterflies.
even now, I guess
and-
you don't have to wait till it blooms next summer. You can
Right.
do it now.
Yeah, I have so many.
Definitely. And like whenever, you know, like you do events for that as well, like I'd love to get them on here. Just another way that we can just kind of like and share and promote ourselves and what we're trying to do here. So
Definitely.
I am not on Facebook, so don't be offended if you don't see me as one of the
That's
likes.
totally fine. It's your personal choice.
Fantastic job, Vic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, not a problem.
Awesome. So exciting.
All right.
Minimize.
Next thing on our, or any other comments for her? Nope. Okay, moving on. Urban bee and chicken ordinances. An update from Stephen, please.
Yeah, so this one, it's been a lot longer process than I was hoping, but our hope is that we're going to get it right and not have to revise it for a long time, if at all. So I've been talking to other staff, and I know I've had some residents in touch with me. They gave me a lot of good information regarding other ordinances. Some of the examples, you know, Eau Claire, La Crosse, you know, some of the other ones around the state. I've been trying to bring ours a little bit more in line with some of theirs. And so that's what I did. And tomorrow I'm supposed to meet with our attorneys and our, like my boss and his boss, basically. So Darren Burrich, who's my direct supervisor, Alan Davis, Director of Community Development, and we're going to try to make sure that we have a cohesive strategy as far as bringing this forward in terms of what direction we want to go with some of the ordinance. Some things are not ironed out yet. So hopefully the intent of this meeting tomorrow is to get that done from a staff standpoint. And then hopefully, I mean, because otherwise the ordinance, all the pieces are there. It's just a matter of us as staff getting on the same page before we bring it back to the board. So that's kind of where we are on that. And I did try to, like I said, incorporate some of the research that some of the residents have sent my way. I tried to look personally into some of those other ordinances to make sure we were more in line with those.
So it continues to be a work in progress, but it's getting closer to the finish line.
Closer, yep.
Brian.
Thank and thank you for the research that you guys brought forward, and a lot of it was very helpful. Yep.
Okay. Agenda items for future meetings. Hey, we crossed a couple of things off tonight. That was good. We can move on to some more stuff. I think that after we do our 2019 goal setting in our workshop tonight, we're probably going to have a better idea of some of our agenda items for future meetings. I do have something planned for our March meeting. We will have a speaker, probably for 15 minutes or so. I think you'll find that interesting. And that's all that I had down. So if there's anything else that you think of that we need to, if you want to give us, obviously we'll have updates on how things are going for the farmers market and the Facebook page and stuff. But if there's anything else, just let Stephen know so that we can get it on that agenda in time.
Could I have the shoreline restoration on there for April?
Sure.
Not necessarily March, but I'd like to meet with the major players in March and then get it on for April so I could update what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn to workshop session so that we can finish up the sustainability plan.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
On that second.
Thank you.